Effects on this console is basically they are ways to manipulate parameters in a specific pattern. So it basically, they will cycle the movements or changes of a parameter for the selected fixtures using some sort of waveform. They are not sequences. They are separate things that can be stored into sequences. But basically they alter the DMX channel repetitively in a cycle over a certain amount of time using a waveform. So say I was dealing with a dimmer. I wanted to create a dimmer effect. Say I applied a basic sine wave to that effect, and I played it back. So that sine wave is just a gentle movement of slowly over time, gradually changing from up and down. So if I applied a sine wave to the dimmer, it would get brighter, and then it would get dimmer, and it would get brighter and dimmer based upon the wavelength. That would be the amount of time that it's going to take, and the amplitude of the wave, which would be the amount of the change that's going to happen. Okay, so we're going to see a lot more about how that works. You can use pretty much any waveform that is in the console, and we'll look at those. You can also create your own waveform if you wanted to. So you could use a sawtooth wave or create your own little zigzag wave that you wanted to. You can do that. There's also different types of effects. So first difference is between absolute or relative effects. So an absolute effect is going to apply that that effect's waveform to the default value of the parameter. So in the case of, let's just say in the case of a tilt, our default value for tilt is generally going to be 0. We're pointing straight down. So if I applied a tilt effect on a sine wave to that fixture, it would apply the center of that wave to the default value, or 0. So it would, from pointing straight down, it would tilt up a little bit and then go back through center to tilt the other way a little bit and keep doing that, okay? So it's absolute. It is forced to the center. It forces the center of the effect to the default value of that parameter. They also have relative effects. So relative effects will take into account the current value of the parameter. So say I have that same light pointed up at the downstage center position, and then I applied that same tilt sine effect. Instead of forcing the center of the effect to its default or 0 state, it would force the center of that effect to its current position or downstage center. So it would start at downstage center, tilt up above the stage, and then go back through your downstage center position and tilt down towards the front of the stage, and keep repeating that, okay? And then the way you know that what mode the effect is in the cell up here. It will either have an A in the top right corner or a R in the top right corner, telling you whether it's an absolute or relative effect, okay? The other two differences between types of effects is whether it's selective or a template effect. A selective effect is only going to apply to the fixtures. It's going to be only applicable to the fixtures that were selected when it was created. So if I only had my quantum profiles selected when I create an effect and it's set to be selective, then only the quantum profiles could use that effect. No other fixtures could do it. A template effect is going to be kind of like, a template. So it will be able to be applied to any fixtures, no matter which fixtures you had selected when you made it. So there are times when you want to make selective effects because they're only for those specific fixtures. Most of the time we want template effects so that later on, if we want to use it for another light, we can. Okay, so let's go ahead and get some effects in here. We're blank right now, and we don't really want to have to create all of our basic effects from scratch every time. So the MA is nice, and they have a pre-built effect library that is in software that we can import. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go to Setup. And then on the left side, Down almost at the bottom, you see this import export option. So we're going to click that. We are importing something, so we'll select import. And we want to import effects. So we'll click the effects option. And then this will open up our import export screen for our effects. We have tabs at the top. This is just like kind of the backup menu where I select which drive I'm dealing with. We want to make sure we're in the internal drive because that's where the file for the pre-built effects is stored. It's in the console software itself, not on a show file sort of deal. So we'll make sure we have this predefined .xml highlighted, and then we see all the effects over here that we could import. We're just going to import them all. So we're going to double click in the name header to make them blue. Selected everybody and hit the import button. And I think that worked. Close the window, close the setup window, and yes. Now we see I've filled in, these are most of the basic, most used effects for people. So it has added those into our show. And we see top right corner, most of these are absolute effects. They have an A here. And they're also template effects. They have a T. Down here, there are some relative effects also. And those are also templates. All right, so that's the basic ones we need. But we can also, again, like I said, create our own. And we want to do this often because these might not always work for us. We want it to slow down, speed up. I would never edit one of these basic effects. If you want to start with one of these effects and then manipulate it, I would always copy it to a new cell and then manipulate that one. I would always leave these imported ones the way they are. And just like our preset, where we looked here on our control presets, we saw the cells here at the bottom with different ones highlighted white or not. With our effects, we have the same thing. It tells us what attributes the effects are controlling. So most of these dimmers are controlling dimmer. Shutter is controlling in the beam section. Color, RGB rainbows in the color section. So we can see here pretty easily where this is coming from, okay? All right, so let's make our own effect. So let's clear 3 times, make sure our programmer is cleared out. We're going to select fixture 505. So 505, set the dimmer to full so we can see it. And we can either press the edit key and touch on one of these cells, or if we have a mouse, we can just right click in the cell. So let's just right click in cell number 32 here, the first open one we have. And this, I'm going to throw it up to screen 3 so you can see it better. This is our effect editor window. So this is where we're going to add in all of our stuff that we want in this effect. It's blank right now, so we don't have any lines in here. We can add multiple lines in any effect, but it's important to note that each line is one attribute. So if I want to be controlling pan and tilt, I would actually have 2 lines in here, one for pan, one for tilt. So let's go ahead and hit the add button here at the bottom. We want to go ahead and add a line. And here's where we select which attribute we want. For us, we're going to be making a tilt effect. So we'll come in here and we'll select just the tilt function. We hit confirm here at the bottom. And we will see we have now added in the default values for the tilt on this line number 1. Now, this is not a live change all the time. So if we're making an adjustment here in this effect editor, and we want to see what that change is doing, we're going to have to go back to the effects pool and actually apply that effect. So I click on the effect, and then it actually starts doing it. Now, this is pretty ugly right now because it's just the default values that were put in here. And the reason you see this light jerking around like that is because the light physically cannot move fast enough for the speed that I have in here to complete the effect fully. So it's actually stopping, it's cutting itself off. That's why it's jittering, it's going too fast. All right. So we need to adjust some things to make this prettier. We can either manipulate these things by right-clicking in the cells here and just adjusting it if you know what you want. We also have this Edit Effect Line button up here at the top right. So let's click that. And this will give us kind of a visual and some wheels here to adjust specific functions of this effect. So let's go ahead and just take the width and the speed faders and adjust those until you get a nice smooth tilt sine wave going on. So let's bring the speed down, and this is kind of touchy. It moves kind of fast, so just be careful. So we're still kind of glitchy a little bit. I'm gonna come down to, oops, see, it's very touchy. If you highlight, if you just hold your mouse over this, you can also use your scroll wheel, but you can see it's in very big increments. So the faster you move your mouse, the bigger the jump is going to be. So I'm going to come to around 11. And you can see here, now I have a nice smooth tilt. It's able to complete its full movement on the waveform, just up and down. Oops. Now I can also adjust my low and high. So that would be dealing with your amplitude. So right now we have -50 and 50. So it's going to from 0 to 50% one way and then 50% the negative way. Jump that up so that my low is now 91. Now it's going much further in the negative direction out towards me. So I can adjust the size that way. If I adjust the other one, it'll go further up the back wall as well. So I can adjust this to be whatever size I need it to be. I can also change the width. So if I start changing the width, you're gonna see I'm gonna start cutting off this waveform over here. So let's pull the width down to 50. So I've actually just cut this wave off and squished it. So for each cycle now, it does the complete movement one way, then the next way, and then it stops in the middle for a little bit. And then it repeats itself again. So you could use that if you want it to kind of stop in the middle for some reason. If not, just let it go continuously. Okay. We can also do some phase changes here. So if you had a group of lights selected, they're going to offset from each other a certain amount. So I could change the phase of the wave here. That's more advanced. We're not going to deal with that right now, but you could. All right, and so once we're done with that, let's go ahead and close the edit effect window and the create the effect window. Now, when we look back here at our effect pool, we see the green R and the red S. So when I created that effect, I set it to be a relative effect. So it's relative to wherever I place it. If I go here to my preset 1 view and I now take this to the drum riser, you will now see that it is applying that effect to the drum riser position as its center. So it looks a little different because it is a relative effect. It's relative to my position. If I take myself back to home or 0, 0, it's back here where we had it. It's also selective. So I only had one fixture, 505, selected when I made that effect. So unfortunately, now if I try to select fixture 506 and tell it to do that effect, it will not, because it was not selected when I made it, and it's set to be a selective effect. So to get around that, it automatically is going to take your selection when you create these. So if we right click on the effect again and come back in here to the effect editor, in this quantity box here at the beginning, that's telling you how many fixtures I have selected. Okay, so if I wanted to change this to be a template effect, and not selective anymore. I'm going to clear my programmer out, make sure I have no lights selected. And then once I'm back in here, I'll hit this take selection button, which will change it to none. None means that this is now a template effect. And you'll see over here it is changed to a T. If I wanted to make this a absolute effect, I just click in this box. That's how I change it to absolute or relative. Okay, I'll leave it relative. Position effects, we usually will want to be relative. All right, and now let's just look at this. Let's see, 503. So select 503 through 511. Set the dimmer value to full. And now let's apply that template effect that we have made here now. And you'll see that, yes, it's applying to all the lights now. And you can see how they're separated from each other just a little bit with a phase of the wave. So they don't all go at the same time. They're spaced out. So let's just see what happens when we make this an absolute effect. Right now it's relative. So, you know, if I place these again in the drum riser position, it's applying that effect from the drum riser as its center. I go back to my effects pool and I right click and change the mode to absolute. And then reapply the effect. So we're going to clear it out. 503 through 511. Click here. And now, no matter if I place it in a new position, it's going to ignore me. So I tried to put them in downstage edge, but it's still forcing that effect towards its home position or straight down. Now, if I went to downstage center, it's going to change a little bit because I have pan information in there as well. Still applying it to the center of the tilt because that's what's in the effect. We don't have pan in the effect, so it's not affecting the pan. The lights are still panning over in this drum riser preset, but tilt is still forcing it to its center or zero spot. Okay, so that's the difference. All right, let's plus clear 3 times. Let's go ahead and name that effect. So click on it. We'll type in ABS tilt for absolute tilt. And please do that because I think that that is a part of the test out. So when playing back effects, there's different ways to do it. Like I said, you can store effects into cues in a sequence on an executor. You can also apply an effect itself to an executor. So I can put different things on these executors. It doesn't have to be a sequence. I can put effects on them. I can put like speed faders on them. I can put macros on them. I could put chasers on them, all sorts of stuff. So let's just go ahead and look at how we can play these back. So the easy way is just you select the lights and put this into its effect, and then I could store this. You see it's in the programmer, and when you have an effect applied in the programmer, it gives you the pink box. And just notice also that when I click on an effect, my encoders change now to effect options. You got to be really careful with this because now these encoders are affecting you know, the speed, the low, the high, the phase of this, and then I have even another section where I could do other things with it. So just make sure you pay attention to that because you come in here and you start, you're like, oh, I need to tilt this. So you come over here to this encoder and start tilting it. And while you're affecting the low value, not the tilt, because to do that, you got to click on the position fader again. Oftentimes, it will also place you into the effect mode on the executors, and they'll show up pink. Be really careful with this, because now if I start tilting this, oh boy, I'm really screwing myself up, because I'm affecting the effect right now, which I don't want to do. So to get back to our values, we go back to value layer. Be very careful with that. And I probably just messed up my effect, so let me fix it. No, it's good. Okay. So just look at that, and then that's the easy way. I could store this into any extra sequence that I wanted to as a part of the queue. Okay. For us, we're going to assign it to itself to an executor. So let's make a new one. We're going to select group 12, our Aura XP main. We're not going to put them at full, because we're actually going to be creating a dimmer effect here. But actually go ahead and put them at full just so you can see them, and you're going to see what happens here. We're going to go back to our effects view here into the next cell, right click on whatever the next one is here. It's 33, it looks like. I said we're going to add a dimmer effect, so we're going to go here to add and find dim here. It's the only thing in there, so it's going to highlight the whole line. Okay, we'll hit confirm, and then click on the effect to assert it. And we will see that our dimmer effect starts. We added a dimmer sine wave on this. Okay, you can adjust this however you want to. Either you can use this edit effect line button and use these faders, or whatever you'd like. I can just right click here. I'm going to slow it down a little bit to about 25. You can also come in here and change your sine wave to another one if you want to. So these are all the pre-built waveforms. So we have some ramps, sines and cosines, randoms, PWM, which is pulse width modulation. We have waves and crosses and circles. So chase is the one that you're going to choose if you want it to be kind of like a marquee chase. So it's going to be one light at a time coming across here like this. I'm going to use that. And if you scroll over at the end here, we also have these three options of groups, blocks, and wings. And you can play with these however you want to. So when I do groups, it's going to be groups of however many lights I select. So if I put 3 in here, each step is going to be 3 lights at a time. And they're spaced out. Okay. We'll take that back to 0. Say I wanted to do blocks. So blocks would be 3 lights all together if I press 3. So if I do blocks of 3, oh, there's 3 lights all together. Well, sort of 3. There's 3 groups here, or blocks. And this is just something you kind of have to play around with to get it to look the way you want to. Okay, wings is going to apply these to the edges of the selection. So if I do 2 wings, they'll go from outside to in. 3 wings would start to get a little bit messy because I don't have a lot of lights selected. 1 wing is not really going to do anything. So you can use these to manipulate however you want to. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to select back to sine wave. And then pull the speed up to about 40. So it's a little faster. So I have a nice little dimmer effect there in the back. Okay, when you have it looking the way you want to, we're going to go ahead and close the effect window. Whoops. Close the edit effect window. We're going to name this XB dimmer. And we're going to go ahead and clear our programmer out, because we're not going to actually be storing this anywhere. We're going to assign the effect itself to an executor. So to do that, we're going to click the assign button right here. Select the XB dimmer effect that we just made, and we're going to assign it to fader number 15 over here. You can see when I do that, it shows up as pink, telling me that I've assigned an effect there, not a sequence. Okay, now if I play this back, I just turn it on and I'm now directly playing that effect back through the playback side of the console instead of the programmer or cues. I'm playing it back directly with this executor. And my master here is going to be my intensity, same as everything else. Now we can change these buttons. And since this is an effect, I have different options. So click in the top header here. You're going to go back to the functions option here so that I can see my buttons and my fader. Okay, we're going to change the go button here because we don't need a go button. It's just one effect here, so we're not advancing through things. We're going to hit that and change it to toggle so that that's now an on-off switch. We still have our master there, that's fine. With our top two buttons, since this is an effect, and I have a toggle button here to turn it on and off now, I don't need these on and off keys. But what I might want to control is the speed of the effect. So for the middle button here, the on, let's change it to half speed. And our off button here at the top to double speed. So we got half speed and then double speed. Once that's matching, we're going to hit the X key here to close that. And now I have my buttons mapped over here the way that I want them to be. So now I can toggle the effect on and off using this button. I can control the intensity with the fader. And I have double speed, which speeds it up by double, and then half speed, which I can keep doing down until it's pretty low. I'll make this a little bit bigger. And you can see in here, instead of reading a Qs, it's reading a BPM. And as I change this, it doubles all the way up to 120 is as far as it's letting me do it with my current speed settings. If I needed it faster than this, I would have to come in here and change the speed in the effect itself, okay? But that's how we would play it back from an executor. So I just have all these things that I could place here. And in a live programming situation or a live show where you don't know what's happening, this is kind of handy. So now I can throw up effects really quick. Okay, we'll toggle that off. So now let's look at how we do this if it's in a part of a queue. So we'll clear 3 times. Let's go ahead and select our Viper washes. We're going to set the dimmer to full. We're going to put them in the yellow color preset. And we're going to apply that absolute tilt effect that we made to these. You zoom out a little bit on 3D. So you can see it better. All right. All right, we're going to store this now to an executor itself. So we're going to hit store. And let's store this to just the fader next to number 14 here, next to our other effect. And we'll see this time we're actually stored a sequence because we didn't assign an effect, we stored it and assigned it to a sequence. Now, since this is a cue list, I'm going to clear this out and I'm going to play this back. So it's a cue list now. So say I have multiple cues in here and I need to stop the effect. Well, the effects are going to track through just like any other value. So this effect is going to continue in this sequence until I tell it to stop. The only way I have to stop it right now is to hit off and turn off the whole sequence. Well, I don't want to do that. So say I want a cue, the next cue to be just to stop the effect, but leave the dimmer and color in. Well, to do this, it is going to be what is known as the Stomp command on this console, Stomp. And to get that command, there is no button for it here. I could just type it in with my keyboard. But the shortcut for it is going to be, you're going to hold down the MA key. In our case, we're just going to click the MA key, which is kind of a shift button, and click on at. And then you would release the MA key, which would place Stomp in the command line. That is the command to tell an effect to stop. Now to do this, I have to make the selection of who I'm trying to stomp. So in our case, it's our Viper washes. So I'll select the fixtures, hold MA, press at and release both keys at the same time. It's a little bit different on the console. And then say I want to kill every single effect. Say I had multiple effects running on these fixtures. Then I would just hit please. And that would stop all the effects running for whatever fixtures I had selected. If I had just one effect that I wanted to stop, again, I make the selection, hold MA, press at and release, and then just select in the pool which one I want to stomp. You can do it either way. I'm sorry, I'm just reading a little bit here real quick. Another way to do this instead of stomp is, say I have the effect running here. I could use the release command for the attributes to release the effect, okay? And then to do that, I would just go, so I have the fixture selected, I'll come back to the position tab. It's just tilt that's running on this effect. So if I click in the box, I have release up here, which will release the value. You're not going to see it live because that's, again, not a live thing. But now if I go to store this to executor 14, and I'm going to create the second queue. Clear 3 times, Q1 is running with the effect. Now if I hit go, the second queue had the release command in there, and I obviously didn't do it correctly. So let me try that again. Probably my values were not active. Like I said, that's very important to make sure that we have them active. So I did something wrong. So store Q2, merge. Interesting. It does not like me doing that. So I'll just do it the stomp way. It's the way I prefer anyway. Okay, that worked. So now Q1, I have the effect running. In Q2, I have the stomp command in there so they stop. So that's how you're going to stop effects in a cue list. You use stomp or release. We still see the dimmer and the yellow because we didn't make any changes to those in Q2 and they're tracking through. So they're going to stay on until I tell them not to. Important to note. So let's turn off this executor and go back and turn on our XP dimmer that we made. Now grab your Aura XP main group and try to put the dimmer at full. You'll see in the programmer I did. It says open, so they are at full in the programmer. The effect is always going to override any values in the any other values for those attributes if it's running. So if I have a dimmer effect running, there's no way for me to tell this to go to full other than to put them at full, and then I would have to also stomp it. So an effect will always override any other values, either from the programmer or from another playback. It's going to override it if they're conflicting. Okay. So effects have the highest priority in playback.